There were no other cars on the road. According to police Constable Jean Gauden, she and her companion were alone on the A66 when something appeared above them. It was close, too close, she believed, to be an aircraft. Round, surrounded by a moving ring of lights, hovering directly over the car. Then it shifted to her right and disappeared, not into cloud, not beyond the horizon. In Gauden's account, the object was simply there, and then it was gone. She was a serving Northumbria police officer. The encounter reportedly happened in 2004, and for more than 20 years, she could not explain what she believed she had seen. But her story was not published alone. In July 2026, a British newspaper placed it inside a much larger claim that the A66 had become Britain's UFO hotspot and that more than 250 police witnesses had finally broken their silence. That sounds like an extraordinary body of evidence. But when the headline is separated from the underlying record, three very different things begin to emerge. One disturbing encounter on a dark road, a private collection of police testimony, and a UFO corridor that may not be as firmly documented as the story suggests. So what actually happened on the A66, and what do 250 police witnesses really prove? The A66 crosses northern England, connecting the east and west through long, exposed sections of countryside. The portion highlighted in the recent coverage runs between Scotch Corner and Penrith, meeting the M6 near the edge of the Pennines. At night, parts of that route can feel remarkably empty. Headlights appear at great distance. Hills erase and reveal lights without warning. Weather changes quickly. Aircraft, stars, reflections, and road gradients can all create confusing impressions, especially through glass and while a vehicle is moving. But Gauden's description was not of a distant light. She remembered a structured, circular object directly above the vehicle. She described lights moving around it and said it shifted sideways before vanishing without any visible departure. That is what makes her account difficult to dismiss with one convenient answer. A star does not hover above a car. A normal aircraft does not simply blink out at close range. And consumer quadcopter drones, the explanation now applied to almost every strange light, were not a common presence over British roads in 2004. But there is a problem. The version currently available to the public comes principally through a retrospective interview promoted more than 2 decades after the event. The recent article does not provide an original incident log, an exact time, weather data, air traffic checks, photographs, radar returns, or a contemporaneous statement. The language is precise. The supporting record, at least publicly, is not. That does not make Gauden's account false. It means the account cannot presently be tested in the same way as an event documented on the night it occurred. And that distinction becomes even more important when one encounter is used to define an entire road. The man behind the collection is Roy Teague, a West Midlands police inspector who served for 26 years and worked in firearms operations. Teague did not begin as someone claiming to have seen a UFO. In a 2022 Police Federation profile, he said he had never had an encounter himself. His interest began after watching a documentary about sightings near American air bases. The question that stayed with him was not simply whether the stories were true, but who might be capable of describing such events carefully. He chose police officers. Teague began inviting serving and retired officers, along with police staff, to describe sightings they had witnessed or incidents they had investigated. Some could remain anonymous. Some had apparently never spoken publicly before. By 2026, promotional material for close encounters of the police kind said he had interviewed more than 250 officers and selected approximately 75 of the most dramatic accounts for publication. That number matters, but its meaning matters more. These are not necessarily 250 institutional case files released by British police forces. They are accounts collected by an individual investigator, often years after the alleged events, for a commercial anthology. Some may be supported by records, others may rest only on memory. Some officers are named, others are not. And because only a selection has been published, the complete dataset cannot yet be independently examined for duplication, corroboration, ordinary explanations, or how the interviews were conducted. The collection may preserve testimony that would otherwise disappear. But an archive of testimony is not the same thing as an archive of verified incidents. That is not a minor technicality. It is the difference between evidence that a strange object was present and evidence that many officers sincerely remember encountering one. Police officers are trained to observe, describe, and defend their decisions. A career can depend upon accuracy. That is why a witness like Gauden immediately feels more significant than an anonymous post on social media. The professional cost also matters. Teague argues that many officers remained silent because admitting an interest in UFOs could damage their reputations. If a witness has nothing obvious to gain and something to lose, the report deserves attention. But credibility and infallibility are not the same thing. Police training does not provide automatic expertise in astronomy, aviation, atmospheric optics, or objects seen briefly at night. A sincere observer can accurately describe the experience of seeing something extraordinary while still misidentifying its cause. Memory creates another difficulty. It does not preserve an event like a body camera. Every act of remembering reconstructs it. Later questions, media imagery, and repeated retelling can sharpen uncertain details rather than weaken them. So an officer's testimony may raise the evidentiary value of a report. It cannot, by itself, identify the object, and Teague's broader collection demonstrates exactly why. The reported objects do not form one consistent machine. In 1964, Police Constable Wally Cox described a cigar-shaped object with illuminated openings that accelerated away without a vapor trail. In 1973, Wiltshire Sergeant Alan Blue reported a stationary bright light surrounded by smaller, independently moving lights before the larger source shot upward. In 1980, West Yorkshire Inspector Philip Balmforth remembered 4 red lights traveling toward Ilkley from Baildon Moor. During the 1990s, Metropolitan Police Officer Nick Spinks said a huge, softly illuminated disc silently overtook his car above the treetops in Kent. In 2010, Birmingham officer Jerry McHugh and members of 2 rival groups reportedly stopped during a confrontation to watch a metallic J-shaped object cross the skyline. And in 2024, an anonymous counter-terrorist firearms officer described dark, pixel-like squares that seemed to conceal something behind them. Cigar, lights, disc, letter-shaped metal, pixelated darkness. The accumulation is unsettling, but it is not physical consistency. It may indicate a persistent, unidentified phenomenon. It may also show how many unrelated things can enter the same category when the category is defined by one fact. The witness could not identify them. This is where the recent story begins to change. The newspaper calls the A66 Britain's UFO hotspot and refers to multiple reports along the route. Yet, in the public article, the detailed named A66 police encounter is Jean Gauden's account from 2004. The other showcased reports occurred in Oxford, Wiltshire, West Yorkshire, Kent, Birmingham, and Warwickshire, not repeatedly along the A66. No national comparison is presented. No count of A66 incidents is provided. No method is given for deciding what qualifies as a hotspot. Perhaps the book contains additional A66 cases. Perhaps records not reproduced in the article support the label, but on the evidence currently visible to the public, calling the road Britain's leading UFO corridor goes beyond what has been demonstrated. This is how legends are often built, not necessarily through invention, but through compression. One memorable encounter becomes multiple sightings become a pattern, and a pattern becomes a hotspot before anyone defines the denominator. How many reports occurred there, over what period, compared with how much traffic, and compared with which other British roads? Without those answers, the A66 is a compelling setting, not a proven cluster. Yet that does not erase what Gauden says happened. It isolates it. And a single isolated report can be more honest and more disturbing than a pattern created by a headline. Could the object have been an aircraft seen from an unfamiliar angle? It is possible. At night, distance and scale become extremely difficult to judge. A plane turning away can appear to vanish when its lights rotate out of view. Motion from a moving car can make a distant object seem to track the observer. Could it have been a reflection inside the vehicle? Reflections can move with the observer and disappear abruptly, but Gauden described the object moving to her right and perceived it as external, above the car. Without recreating the conditions, the reflection hypothesis remains only a possibility. Could it have been an atmospheric effect? Britain's own Ministry of Defense examined thousands of UFO reports in a study later known as Project Condagen. Its authors concluded that no evidence established hostile or controlled craft and proposed that some unresolved observations might involve unusual atmospheric plasma phenomena. That plasma explanation was itself speculative and was not independently validated as the solution to Gauden's case. The Ministry of Defense ultimately closed its UFO reporting desk in 2009. Its position was not that every witness had lied or that every object had been identified. It was that decades of reports had produced no evidence of an extraterrestrial presence or a military threat, and that continued investigation offered no defense benefit. That conclusion is narrower than believers sometimes suggest, and narrower than skeptics sometimes imply. It does not prove that nothing unusual was seen. It says that unidentified reports did not become evidence of alien visitation or a threat to the United Kingdom. The same limit applies here. None of the ordinary explanations can be confirmed without the missing contemporary details. But the inability to confirm an ordinary explanation does not confirm an extraordinary one. An unresolved memory is not a spacecraft. It is an unresolved memory. So what remains after the headline is stripped away? It is reasonably established that Roy Teague, a long-serving British police inspector, gathered testimony from more than 250 serving and former officers and selected a smaller group of accounts for his 2026 anthology. It is also established that Jean Gauden publicly attributed a striking 2004 encounter to the A66, a close, circular object with moving lights that, in her recollection, vanished without flying away. What is not publicly established is that 250 official police reports document 250 verified encounters. Nor has the available coverage demonstrated that the A66 is statistically Britain's leading UFO hotspot, and no photograph, radar record, original log, or independently checkable data from Gauden's encounter has been produced in the sources available for this investigation. The strongest reasonable conclusion is therefore not that police officers proved extraterrestrial craft were crossing Britain. It is that many officers encountered or believed they encountered events they could not explain, and that professional stigma kept some of those memories private for years. That is culturally important. It may also contain genuinely anomalous cases, but determining which ones requires more than a badge and a compelling recollection. It requires dates, original statements, locations, weather, air traffic, independent witnesses and records created before a story has decades to evolve. The A66 may not yet be a proven UFO corridor. But somewhere on that road in 2004, a police constable looked upward and saw something close enough, structured enough, and strange enough to remain with her for more than 20 years. Perhaps the most important part of the story is not that a police officer saw a UFO. It is that even a police officer could not tell us what it was. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and never confuse a story with proof.